Hello. Today we will uncover one of the most mysterious cases in the world. A case that still sends shivers down people's spines when mentioned, the Axemen of New Orleans. The story begins in the United States. During the early 20th century, a time of upheaval and mystery. This case is ranked among the top 10 most famous criminal cases in the world, haunting the public with the brutality and boldness of the killer. The murderer, dubbed the Axeman of New Orleans, spread terror across the entire city. He operated at night, sneaking into homes while people were fast asleep. What's terrifying is that he didn't bring his own weapon, and instead, he used tools already available in the victims' homes, typically an axe. After finding a suitable weapon, he would slip into the bedroom and strike the victim on the head. Even more gruesomely, he would leave the weapon at the scene as if to mock the police. And he didn't stop there. After committing a series of horrifying murders, he even sent taunting letters to the police, further enraging the public. Now let's take a look at the setting of the story. The city of New Orleans, Louisiana, located in the southern United States near the Gulf of Mexico. New Orleans is the largest city in the state, known for its French-inspired architecture, unique Creole cuisine, and vibrant musical atmosphere. It is considered one of the most unique cities in America. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, causing its population to plummet from 790,000 to 370,000, making it the second most depopulated city after Detroit. Our story takes place during the 1910s in New Orleans. The first case occurred in the early morning of May 23, 1918, a Thursday. The first victim was a man named Andrew, 28 years old. Around 4:30 a.m. while Andrew was asleep, he suddenly heard painful screams coming from the house next door. The house next door belonged to his older brother, Joseph, and his sister-in-law, Catherine. Sensing something was wrong, Andrew quickly got dressed, woke up another younger brother, and together they rushed to Joseph's house. Joseph's house was a one-story house located at a street corner. Joseph was an Italian-American grocer. He owned a grocery store and a bar. Here was the location of the grocery store, and here was the location of the bar. These two areas were not connected. The kitchen was here with a door leading outside. Here was the bathroom, and this was the bedroom where Joseph and his wife Catherine usually slept. Andrew and his younger brother knocked on the front door, but there was no answer. They went around to the back door and saw it was only slightly ajar, not locked. The lower right corner of the door showed signs of being forced open. The two brothers entered the house and headed straight to the bedroom. The scene before them was horrifying. Blood was everywhere, on the floor and on the bed. Joseph was lying on his side on the bed, with his feet touching the floor, seemingly still alive but barely breathing. Catherine, however, was already dead. Shocked by the horrific scene, the two brothers immediately rushed to the police station to report the crime. The police quickly arrived at the scene. Unfortunately, Joseph did not survive and died right on the bed. Through the autopsy, police determined that both victims had suffered head injuries caused by a blunt object. The murder weapon was identified as an axe. However, the killer had not used the sharp edge of the axe, but rather the blunt side to strike the victims. Both victims had cuts on their throats. Notably, the cut on Catherine's throat was extremely deep, nearly decapitating her. Her skull was also nearly shattered. At the scene, police found a blood-stained axe and a set of bloodied clothing. No valuables in the house were missing. In the neighbor's yard, police discovered a bloody straight razor. Aside from the pried-open back door panel near the kitchen, there were no signs of forced entry elsewhere. Police suspected that the killer had entered through the back door. The axe and razor were confirmed as the murder weapons. The axe belonged to Joseph, while the razor belonged to Andrew. Based on this evidence, the police proposed the following theory. The killer entered through the kitchen's back door, found an axe and a straight razor. He used the axe to attack Joseph and Catherine, then used the razor to slit their throats. After committing the crime covered in blood, the killer changed into clean clothes at the scene and fled. Since no valuables were stolen, the police ruled out robbery as the motive. The motive for the crime remained unclear. Police turned their attention to Andrew, the owner of the straight razor. He was a barber and owned a local barbershop. A few days before the murder, Andrew had taken a razor home from his shop to sharpen it and had kept it there ever since. It was known that Andrew had recently received a military draft order to serve in World War I. Fearing deployment, he had been frequently drinking at a bar to relieve stress. On the day of the murder, Andrew had stayed at a bar until 1 a.m. before returning home. Around 4:30 a.m., he heard strange noises coming from his brother's house. Andrew had no alibi and could not clearly explain the presence of his razor at the scene. As a result, he was arrested by the police. However, a few days later, due to lack of sufficient evidence and no clear motive, Andrew was released. During the investigation, a detective discovered a chalk message written on a wall near the crime scene. The message read, "Mrs. Macho will be like Mrs. Tony tonight." Investigators believed Mrs. Macho referred to the victim, Catherine. They also discovered that 7 years prior, a local Italian-owned grocery store had been attacked. The store owner was affectionately known by customers as Mrs. Tony. The investigator suspected a possible connection between that earlier crime and the current one. However, since the earlier case had occurred years ago and the records were incomplete, the lead went cold. 1 month after the first murder, the second attack took place. At 7:40 a.m., a delivery truck driver arrived at a grocery store as usual. When he got there, he saw that the store had not yet opened, even though it normally would have been by that time. Knowing that the store owner lived in the back, the driver went around to the rear entrance to check. He saw that the door was unlocked and stepped inside. To his horror, he found a man and a woman lying in a pool of blood, their heads still bleeding, though they appeared to still be faintly breathing. The truck driver immediately rushed to the police station to report the crime. The police arrived at the scene and took both victims to the hospital. Upon examination, the man had been struck with an axe on the right temple, causing a skull fracture, though the injury was not life-threatening. The woman had been struck on the left arm and had lost consciousness. Since the attacker had used the blunt side of the axe, neither victim died on the spot. Police examined the crime scene and found that a rear door panel had been pried open and discarded nearby. In the bathroom, they discovered a blood-stained axe. Inside, there was also a suitcase. Police found a letter written in German, Russian, and an unidentified language. No valuable items had been stolen. Aside from the broken door panel, there were no signs of forced entry elsewhere. The man was identified as Louis, a 60-year-old Italian immigrant. The woman was named Anna. The two were lovers. Police noted that this case had many striking similarities to the previous one. The victims were attacked with an axe. The back panel of the house was pried open, and both crime scenes were only 6 kilometers apart. Therefore, the police believed that both crimes could have been committed by the same perpetrator. Police discovered that Louis had recently had a conflict with a man named Albecken, a 41-year-old African-American. Albecken had previously worked at Louis' grocery store. A week before the incident, he had an argument with Louis and then quit his job. Police immediately sought out Albecken. Since he had no clear alibi, he was arrested. However, no evidence linking him to the case was found, so Albecken was released a few days later. Both victims, Louis and Anna, were given proper medical care at the hospital and gradually regained consciousness. Louis told police that on the night of the attack, while he was asleep, a man broke into the house and assaulted them. Because it was dark, they couldn't clearly see the attacker's face. Anna, who was more seriously injured, believed the assailant was a white man holding an axe. Furthermore, Anna said that Louis might be a German spy, as police had found a letter written in several languages in their home, raising suspicion about Louis' identity. Police investigated the people Lewis had recently interacted with and looked into his activities, but they found no incriminating evidence. This case attracted special attention from the local press. They interviewed Anna. She answered all questions frankly, openly admitting she was Louis's lover and expressing dissatisfaction with the police. Some believed Anna might have had psychological issues. 2 months after the attack, Anna died in the hospital due to severe injuries sustained during surgery. However, a few days before her death, she contacted the police and stated that the person who attacked her was none other than Louis, her lover. Based on her statement, the police immediately arrested Louis and charged him with murder. At the initial trial, Louis was sentenced to life imprisonment. However, he continued to assert his innocence. Louis appealed the verdict in a higher court. The court ruled that Louis was also a victim of the attack. He had sustained serious head injuries. Based on the wounds, doctors concluded that without immediate treatment, Louis could have died. If Louis had been the killer, he would have had to attack himself with the axe after assaulting Anna, a theory deemed unreasonable. As a result, Louis was acquitted and released. With no further leads, the case gradually turned into a mystery. 2 months after the second case, the third incident occurred. The victim was another woman named Anna, full name Anna Schneider, 28 years old, who was 8 months pregnant. That night, Anna was at home alone resting. Her husband worked late and hadn't returned yet. Due to the hot weather, Anna was tossing and turning in bed, unable to sleep. Suddenly, she heard a strange noise outside. Before she could check it out, a tall, dark figure stormed into the bedroom and struck her in the face with a heavy object. Anna lost consciousness immediately. At 10:05 p.m., Anna's husband returned home and found her lying in a pool of blood. Fortunately, Anna still showed signs of life and was rushed to the hospital. Upon examination, she had a deep gash on her scalp. The wound was serious but not life-threatening. Police examined the scene. Only $6 in cash were missing, while other valuables remained untouched. At the scene, police found a blood-stained lamp. As in previous cases, a wooden panel from the back door of the house had been pried open. 2 days after the attack, Anna regained consciousness thanks to medical care and gave birth to a baby girl. She told the police that she only remembered her attacker being a tall man, but couldn't recall any other details. This case once again caused a stir among the public. The local residents were extremely anxious and fearful. They firmly believed that the same perpetrator was behind the attacks and gave him a nickname, the Axeman. 5 days after the third case, the fourth incident occurred. That night, the New Orleans Police Department received a call reporting an attack. A woman phoned in to say her family had been assaulted. Police arrived at the scene immediately and found a man lying in bed, gravely injured in the head but still faintly breathing. The victim was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to his injuries. The victim was identified as Joseph Romano, 31 years old, an Italian grocer. Police conducted a crime scene investigation. As with the previous cases, a rear door panel had been pried open. A bloodied axe was found in the backyard. No valuables in the house had been stolen. Besides the victim, there were 2 other women in the house. One was named Pauline, 15 years old. She was the one who called the police. The other was Mary, Pauline's younger sister. Both girls were nieces of the victim and lived in the adjacent room. Pauline testified that on the night of the attack, she and her sister were asleep when a loud noise woke them. They left their room to investigate. As they opened their bedroom door, they saw a tall man dressed in dark clothing and wearing a soft-brimmed hat standing in the living room. Because the lighting was dim, they couldn't see the man's face clearly. The man also noticed Pauline. After a brief hesitation, he quickly left the house. His footsteps were so quiet, almost inaudible, as if he was wearing rubber-soled shoes. After the incident was reported in the news, many citizens began providing tips to the police. Some said they had seen a bloody axe in their backyard. Others reported seeing a man climbing a fence behind a neighbor's house. Some even claimed to have spotted a suspicious man hiding under a car. There were many similar reports. The police sent officers to investigate every tip, but ultimately none led to results. Some speculated that the killer might have a personality disorder. In normal circumstances, he could be a law-abiding citizen, but at times he would lose control, overwhelmed by the urge to kill and attack others. This, they believed, was why the police were unable to catch him. As more murders occurred, the people of New Orleans grew increasingly terrified. They feared the Axeman would come for them next. The entire city was engulfed in fear. People rushed to buy guns and ammunition to protect themselves. For a time afterward, no similar crimes occurred in New Orleans. The city experienced 7 months of peace. But then, on the night of Monday, March 10, 1919, the fifth attack happened. A merchant named Issad was resting at home when he heard a blood-curdling scream from the house across the street. It was a grocery store owned by an Italian family. The homeowner was Charles Cortimiglia, his wife Rosie, and their 2-year-old daughter. Being close friends with the family, Issad rushed over to check on them. He went to the front door and found it locked. Issad then circled to the back and saw that a wooden panel had been pried off the door, which was only slightly ajar. From inside he could hear agonizing groans. Upon witnessing the scene, Issad immediately entered the house. He saw Charles, the homeowner, lying motionless on the floor covered in blood. Rosie, Charles's wife, was collapsed at the bedroom door, clutching their 2-year-old daughter, also covered in blood. Rosie's head was badly injured. Panicked, Issad rushed outside and alerted the police. Officers arrived at the scene and took both victims to the hospital. Although Charles and Rosie were seriously injured, they miraculously survived. However, their 2-year-old daughter did not. Police examined the crime scene. As with previous attacks, no valuables were stolen from the house. A blood-stained axe was found in the rear hallway near the door. Based on the evidence, police believed that this was yet another crime committed by the Axeman. 2 days after the attack, Charles was released from the hospital. He told police that the assailant was a stranger, but he hadn't been able to see the attacker's face clearly before being struck. However, Rosie, Charles's wife, insisted that she clearly remembered the man who attacked them. None other than Issad, the man who had called the police. Rosie further stated that Frank, Issad's son, was also an accomplice. She signed a sworn statement to prove that her testimony was truthful. In contrast, Charles denied his wife's account. He insisted that the attacker was a stranger, not Issad. The suspect, Issad, was a 69-year-old grocer. He suffered from arthritis and other health issues, and was in poor physical condition. His son Frank was 18 years old, 83 meters tall, and weighed over 90 kilograms. Given his build, it would have been difficult for Frank to squeeze through the hole in the back door panel. It was known that Issad and Charles's family once had a fairly good relationship. However, both operated grocery stores located directly across from each other, so in theory they were business rivals. Later, due to a commercial dispute, Issad sued Charles in court. After that, their relationship completely deteriorated. Although this case bore many similarities to the Axeman's previous crimes, due to Rosie's testimony, the police did not connect this incident to the serial killings. They arrested Isidore and his son Frank, charging them with first-degree murder. Based on Rosie's key testimony, both defendants were convicted. Isidore was sentenced to life in prison, while Frank was sentenced to death. After the verdict, both filed appeals. Rosie and Charles divorced due to conflicts that arose after the incident. 1 year later, Rosie changed her statement. She admitted that she had falsely accused Isidore and Frank out of jealousy and hatred. She said the person who attacked her that night was actually a stranger. Not long afterward, Isidore and Frank were released. 3 days after the incident, the local newspaper Times-Picayune received a letter believed to be from the Axeman. The letter read, From hell, March 13th, 1919. To the people of this earth. You failed to catch me in the past, and you will never catch me in the future. You have never seen me, for I am invisible. Like the ether that surrounds your earth, I am not a human being but a spirit, a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you call the Axeman of New Orleans, and the foolish police cannot stop me. I am indeed the Axeman whom the people of New Orleans and your foolish police call by that name. When I see fit, I shall come and claim the lives of more victims. Only I know who they shall be. No one can stop me except those of my own blood. I shall leave no clues behind. The axe, dripping with blood and brains of those I've sent to hell to keep me company, shall speak for itself. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to anger me. Of course, I am a reasonable being. I am not at all upset with the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they are too foolish. They mock not only me but also His Majesty Satan, Franz Joseph, and others. But they should know, it is far wiser not to try to track me, for silence is better than incurring the wrath of the Axeman. I believe there is no need to issue such a warning, for I am certain the police will always avoid me, as they have done in the past. They are quite intelligent. They know how to stay far from danger. Surely the people of New Orleans consider me the most terrifying murderer. They are right, I am. But if I wished, I could be even worse. If I chose, I could visit your city every single night. I could kill any citizen, but even the most virtuous, for I am closely allied with the angel of death. Now, to be precise, next Tuesday night, at 12:15, I shall pass through New Orleans. With my infinite mercy, I offer you this small piece of advice. Listen carefully. I am very fond of jazz music. In the name of all devils in hell, I hereby declare that every house in which jazz is being played that night will be spared. If everyone has a jazz band playing, so much the better. But one thing is certain, on Tuesday night, those who do not play jazz music will feel the wrath of my axe. Signed, the Axeman. In the letter, the Axeman claimed to be a demon from hell and declared he would kill anyone not listening to jazz music after 12:15 a.m. on March 19th. The letter's contents were made public immediately, plunging the people of New Orleans into extreme panic. They feared the Axeman would strike that very night, only 1 week away. Police were placed on high alert and increased patrols throughout the city in hopes of capturing him. On the night of March 18th, 1919, New Orleans took on a surreal atmosphere. Many wealthy families hired live jazz bands to perform in their homes all night. Jazz music echoed from houses all across the city. Those who couldn't afford musicians gathered at bars that featured jazz performances. Every bar was packed, crowded with people eager to hear the music. When the clock passed 12:15, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The city had endured a night of terror, but no one was attacked. The Axeman had kept his word. After this event, the Axeman seemed to vanish. For months there was no news of him. The people of New Orleans gradually returned to their normal lives. However, not long after, he resurfaced. On the night of Sunday, August 10th, 1919, the sixth case occurred. A grocer named Steve Boca was sound asleep at home when he was awakened by a strange noise outside. A dark figure stood by his bed and struck him in the head with a blunt object. The attacker hadn't expected Steve to wake up and fled the scene. Steve tried to chase after him, but due to the blow to his head, he collapsed unconscious at a neighbor's doorstep. Police examined Steve's home and found that a rear door panel had been pried open. The attacker had broken in through there. No valuables were stolen. Police suspected this was another attack committed by the Axeman. Due to severe head trauma, Steve couldn't recall many details and was unable to describe his attacker's face. 1 month after Steve's attack, a 19-year-old woman named Sarah Lauman was also assaulted. She suffered serious head injuries and lost several teeth. Fortunately, thanks to the efforts of doctors, Sarah survived. Police examined Sarah's home. This time the back door had not been forced open, but a window was wide open. Police suspected the attacker had entered through the window. A bloodied axe was found on the lawn outside the house. Some people believe this attack may not have been committed by the axeman, but by a different perpetrator. 1 month after Sarah's assault, at around 1 a.m., a woman named Esther was asleep when she heard a loud noise inside her house. Esther was married and had 6 children with her husband Mike. To more easily care for the children, she lived separately from her husband. Upon hearing the noise, Esther ran out of the bedroom and saw 2 suspicious men fleeing. She rushed into her husband's room and saw blood everywhere. Mike was lying on the bed, gravely injured in the head, covered in blood. Esther hurried to the police station to report the crime. Police quickly arrived at the scene. Mike had been struck 18 times in the head with a metal bar fitted with bolts. He was taken to the hospital but died due to the severity of his injuries. After the incident, a photo began circulating, and in it, a man wearing a suit, soft hat, and holding an axe was seen entering Mike's house. However, the authenticity and origin of the photo remain in doubt. After this case, the axeman completely disappeared, never to be seen again. Many people analyze this phenomenon. For serial killers like the Axeman, it's extremely difficult for them to suddenly stop killing. He may have ceased his crimes because he was arrested for another offense or relocated elsewhere. His true identity remains a mystery. There are many different theories. Most of the Axeman's victims were Italian-American grocers. This led some to believe he may have been connected to the mafia. At the end of the 19th century, New Orleans needed a large supply of cheap labor. So many Italians immigrated to the U.S., including people from the island of Sicily and southern Italy. Many of them used their savings to open grocery stores in New Orleans. By 1900, many grocery stores in the city were owned by Sicilians. These immigrants were often victims of racial discrimination in the southern United States. Because they didn't trust local law enforcement, they tended to resolve their problems themselves, which led to many shootings and stabbings. The Italian mafia originated from Sicily. This organization frequently extorted merchants. If they didn't pay, they were threatened. As a result, some theories suggest that certain mafia members continued their criminal activities after immigrating to America. During the investigation, police identified a primary suspect named Joseph Mumfree. In the Axeman's final murder case, the victim had seen 2 suspects. After Mike was murdered, his wife Esther remarried and moved to a new location. However, not long after, Esther's new husband mysteriously disappeared. Joseph Mumfree was believed to have come to Esther's house and extorted her for $500 along with some jewelry. He threatened that if she didn't cooperate, he would kill her, just like he had killed her previous husband. Both Joseph Mumfree and Esther owned guns. Under threat, Esther drew her gun and shot Joseph Mumfree dead. She later told the police that one of the 2 men she had seen on the night of her husband's murder was indeed Joseph Mumfree. In the end, Esther was released as her act was deemed justifiable self-defense. Joseph Mumfree had a long criminal record. He was known to have led a gang that extorted Italian immigrants. Though he had been imprisoned multiple times, he was free during the period when the Axeman was active, and when the Axeman disappeared, Mumfree was arrested again. However, this information was never officially confirmed by the police. During the time the Axeman was active, similar crimes were reported in other parts of Louisiana. Although the methods were very similar, there's no way to confirm whether they were carried out by the Axeman himself or by copycats. Due to poor preservation of evidence during the investigations, the true identity of the Axeman remains an unsolved mystery. All that is known is that he liked to break into victims' homes at night, find an available axe, and quietly sneak into their bedrooms. The Axeman of New Orleans case comes to a close, leaving behind countless unanswered questions and a haunting legacy for the entire city. Was the Axeman truly a demon from hell as he claimed? Or was he simply a cold-blooded killer hiding behind the facade of an ordinary person? Some believe he was a person with a severe personality disorder, driven by an uncontrollable urge to kill. Others believe he was a member of the mafia, carrying out attacks as revenge or in pursuit of power. There is even a theory that the Axeman was not a single person, but a group working together. Each theory has its own strengths and weaknesses, making the case even more mysterious and difficult to comprehend. That concludes today's video. See you again in the next one. Goodbye.